Let's see. Hope you all are doing well. Happy November 1st. November 1st. It's the start of a new month. What do we have, like 60, 62 days the rest of the year? No, 61. 61. November only has 30 days. So we have 61 days left of 2023. That's crazy. This year has definitely flown by. But hey, there's still time. Every day that we wake up, we have the opportunity to continue to grow, to continue to make changes in our lives, and continue to become our best selves. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited to keep reading with you all. For those who don't know, my name is Jam, or my name is Jamal. My name is Jamal Calpin, and this is Reading with Jam, where I making some time to read some personal development books and things that I was already planning on doing. These are books that I already planned on reading because I want to grow, continue to grow as a man. Um, and I also want to continue to grow as a voice actor. So I decided to practice in public. So I'm reading books. I'm reading books because reading is good. Reading is good for you. And, I want to help other people who either don't want to read these type of books. So it's easier for them to listen, for people who rather just listen to books and not spend the time to like read in text. And maybe you just want to hear different aspects on things because I plan on sharing some of my thoughts as I read these books. But we are reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. And it's been good so far. It's been pretty good so far. And I'm grateful to be able to read this and learn from it. If you're watching on YouTube, hey there. If you're watching on Instagram, hey there. For those who are on Instagram, I have a YouTube channel titled The Beneficial Black Man. I might be changing the name soon, but it's there. You can go and check out other content that I have there. My main focus is trying to help Black men, including myself, overcome great mediocrity and live a more vibrant and excellent life for glory and for good, because I believe we're called to be beneficial men. And we're called to live for something greater than ourselves, and we're called to serve those around us and in our community. And for those who are on YouTube, I have an Instagram. You can go and check it out. It's just at Jamal Calpin. And there I'll share other random things of my life. But all right, let's get into the reading for today. Again, we're reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. I feel like my Instagram camera keeps getting out of focus. I'm not sure what's up with that. So I apologize to my Instagram people. But yes, we were reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. And we are on, we'll call it chapter 2 for now. Adjust my mic a little bit. All right. Chapter 2, Places We Go When We Compare. Comparison, admiration, reverence, envy, jealousy, resentment. This is not an English word. Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude. Freudenfreud. I guess these are German. Schadenfreude. Freudenfreud. I apologize for the mispronunciation of those words. Let's continue. Oh, wait, I got to start the clock. Put the time on the clock. Start. All right, here we go. Comparison. Swimming is the trifecta for me: exercise, meditation, and alone time. When I'm swimming laps, you can't call me or talk to me. It's just me and the black stripe. The only thing that can ruin a swim is when I shift my attention from my lane to what's happening in the lanes next to me. It's embarrassing, but if I'm not paying attention, I can catch myself racing the person next to me, or comparing our strokes, or figuring out who has the best workout set. When I go into comparison, I completely lose the meditation and alone time I need. And I once hurt my shoulder trying to race a 20-something triathlete in the next lane. I have this picture hanging in my study as a reminder to focus on my journey and to stop checking the lanes next to me. I think it's cool when people say in my study. Like, you have a study? What does that even look like? What is a study? Anyways, all right. It applies to my time in the pool and everything else. How I parent, my work, my relationships, everything. Research and comparison help me to understand that, like it or not, I'm probably going to check the lanes next to me. But what I do next is up to me. Let's dive in. Sorry, I had to. That's a, I guess, pun. Anyways, comparison. Comparison is actually not an emotion, but it drives all sorts of big feelings that can affect our relationships and our self-worth. More often than not, social comparison falls outside of our awareness. We don't even know we're doing it. This lack of awareness can lead to us showing up in ways that are hurtful to ourselves and others. All of the experiences in this section are connected to comparison, and the goal is to raise our awareness about how and why they happen so we can name them, think about them, and make choices that reflect our values and our heart. We're going to start with comparison, then get into more specific experiences. Researchers Jerry Sauls, Renee Martin, and Lad Wheeler explain that comparing the self with others, either intentionally or unintentionally, is a pervasive social phenomenon, and how we perceive our standings or rankings with these comparisons can affect our self concept, our level of aspiration, and our feelings of well being. They describe how we use comparison not only to evaluate past and current outcomes, but to predict future prospects. This means significant parts of our lives, including our future, are shaped by comparing ourselves to others. Oh, and she has a picture of the pool. Okay. I've collected data on comparison for years, starting with the research that informed the gifts of imperfection. Guidepost number 6 in the list of guideposts for wholehearted living is cultivating creativity and letting go of comparison. Comparison is a creativity killer, among other things. Here is my definition of comparison. Comparison is the crush of conformity from one side and competition from the other. It's trying to simultaneously fit in and stand out. Comparison says, be like everyone else, but better. At first, it might seem that conforming and competing are mutually exclusive, but they're not. When we compare ourselves with others, we are ranking around a specific collection of alike things. We may compare things like how we parent with families, right? We parent with families who have totally different values or traditions from ours. But the comparisons that get us really riled up are the ones we make with the folks living next door, or on our child's soccer team, or at our school. We don't compare our house to the mansions across town. We compare our yard to the yards on our block. I'm not swimming against Katie Ledecky's times. I'm just interested in the stranger in the lane next to me. When we compare, we want to be the best or have the best of our group. The comparison mandate becomes this crushing paradox of fit in and stand out. It's not be yourself and respect others for being authentic. This fit in but win. Oh, sorry. It's fit in but win. I want to swim the same workout as you and beat you at it. Hmm. No, no. Here we go. Sorry, I'm highlighting things. Many researchers talk in terms of upward and downward comparisons. Specifically, Alicia Nortje writes, when we engage in upward social comparison, we compare ourselves to someone who is perceived to be or performing better than we are. In contrast, when we engage in downward social comparison, we compare ourselves to someone who is perceived to be or performing worse than we are. The direction of the comparison doesn't guarantee the direction of the outcome. Both types of social comparison can result in negative and positive effects. Most of us assume that upward comparisons always leave us feeling not enough, and downward comparisons make us feel better than. But researcher Frank Fujita writes, social comparisons can make us happy or unhappy. Upward comparisons can inspire or demoralize us, whereas downward comparisons can make us feel superior or depress us. In general, however, frequent social comparisons are not associated with life's excuse me. In general, however, frequent social comparisons are not associated with life satisfaction or the positive emotions of love and joy, but are associated with the negative emotions of fear, anger, shame, and sadness. These are important findings because, regardless of the different outcomes, in the end, comparing ourselves to others leads us to fear, anger, shame, and sadness. Mm. Here's what makes all of this really tough. Many social psychologists consider social comparison something that happens to us. Fujita writes, from this perspective, when we are presented with another person who is obviously better or worse off, we have no choice but to make a social comparison. It can be hard to hear an extremely intelligent person on the radio, or see an extremely handsome one in the grocery store, or participate on a panel with an expert without engaging in social comparison, no matter how much we would like not to. Even if we do not choose whether or not to make a comparison, we can choose whether or not to let that comparison affect our mood or self perceptions. Whenever I find myself in comparison mode, I think back to an Unlocking Us podcast conversation that I had with my friend Scott, these names, Scott Sonnenschein, about his wonderful book, Stretch. Scott is an pick up. Scott is an organizational psychologist, a researcher, and a professor at Rice University. In the book and on the podcast, Scott talks about the popular comparison cliche: the grass is always greener on the other side, and the idea that people spend a lot of time and money trying to get their grass pristine because they want to outdo their neighbors. As someone who can fall prey to comparing myself and my life to edited and curated Instagram feeds, I laughed so hard when he told me that due to the physics of how grass grows, when we peer over our fence at our neighbor's grass, it actually does look greener, even if it's truly the same lushness as our own grass. I mean, does it get better than that? The grass actually does look greener on the other side, but that means nothing comparatively because it's all perspective. So the bad news is that our hand so the bad news is that our hardwiring makes us default to comparison. It seems to happen to us rather than by our choice. The good news is that we get to choose how we're going to let it affect us. If we don't want this constant automatic ranking to negatively shape our lives, our relationships, and our future, we need to stay aware enough to know when it's happening and what emotions it's driving. My new strategy is to look at the person in the lane next to me and say to myself, as if I'm talking to them, have a great swim. That way, I acknowledge the inevitable and make a conscious decision to wish them well and return to my swim. So far, it's working pretty well. Below are some of the ways we respond to others, often when comparing to our own situations. The more we know, the more we can choose connection over comparison. Admiration and reverence. We feel admiration when someone's abilities, accomplishments, or character inspires us, or when we see something else that inspires us, like art or nature. Interestingly, interestingly, admiration often leads to us wanting to improve ourselves. It doesn't, however, make us want to be like the person or thing we admire. We just want to be better versions of ourselves. That's cool. For example, I admire many female athletes. I don't want to be a professional on tour, but they do inspire me to be the best athlete I can be. Okay, sometimes I want to be a professional on tour, but the senior tour. Reverence, which is sometimes called adoration, worship, or veneration, is a deeper form of admiration or respect and is often combined with a sense of meaningful connection with something greater than ourselves. I can't think of this word. I can't think of this word without thinking of church. This research, pick up. This research definition is probably why. Pick up. This research definition is probably why reverence is a cardinal virtue characterized by the capacity of feeling deep respect, love, and humility for something sacred or transcendent. What's interesting is that while admiration fosters self betterment, reverence seems to foster a desire for connection to what we revere. We want to move closer to that thing or person. A bonus word for our list is irreverent. These are sometimes get me. A bonus word for our list is irreverent. After reading all the research related to reverence, I was curious about how it was defined because I see it all the time on Netflix. It must be a key tag for their algorithm. They have tags for irreverent comedies, irreverent sitcoms, irreverent adult animation, irreverent stand up, irreverent British comedies, and more. I normally do not like any of the shows with the irreverent tag. Oh, that sucks. I looked it up in the Cambridge English Dictionary online. Their definition was not surprisingly very straightforward, not showing the expected respect for official, important, or holy things. I'm not sure, but I think my adult experiences with unchecked authority leave me wary of reverence, and my upbringing, where social conformity was important, leaves me uncomfortable with irreverence. Translation: I sometimes laugh at irreverent humor, then I feel bad. Excuse me. Next, envy and jealousy. Let me be the first to say that I've been using these words all wrong. And I'm pretty sure it's because, like most people, I don't like to say that I'm feeling envious, even when I am. I'd rather offer a friendly, man, that's amazing. I'm so jealous. But as it turns out, I'm probably not jealous when I say that. I'm envious. But I don't like the way that sounds. Here's what I've learned. There are several debates about the inner workings of envy and jealousy, but there seems to be a consensus that these are two significantly different emotions, starting with these definitions. Envy occurs when we want pick up. Envy occurs when we want something that another person has. Jealousy is when we fear losing a relationship or valued part of a relationship that we already have. According to researchers, According to researchers Richard H. Smith and Sung Hee Kim, envy typically involves two people and occurs when one lacks something enjoyed by another. The target of envy may be a person or a group of persons, but the focus of envy is that one lacks something compared with a specific target, whether it be a target individual or a target group. Jealousy typically involves three people and occurs when one fears losing someone to another person. Envy and jealousy result from different situations, generate distinct appraisals, and produce distinctive emotional experiences. Interesting. Envy. A 2015 study found that 90% of recalled episodes of envy can be attributed to one of three categories. One, attraction. As examples, physical attractiveness, romantic attraction, social popularity. Two, competence, e.g., intelligence, knowledge, and three, wealth, financial status, or lifestyle. There's not full agreement in the research, but it appears that some envy comes with hostility. I want that, and I don't want you to have it. I also want you to be pulled down and put down. Some experiences of envy don't include hostile feelings. I want that, but you can have it too, and I don't want you to be put or pulled down. The fact that hostility and a desire for denigration are sometimes part of envy makes it tough to own that emotion. What will we say? I'm envious, but not that kind. Wait, I'm envious, but not the bad kind. Swear. Jealousy. Jealousy doesn't seem to be a singular emotion, but rather a cognitive evaluation in response to feeling anger, sadness, and or fear. In other words, we think jealousy in response to how we feel. According to researchers Mingi Chung and Christine Harris, jealousy typically involves a triad: two people in a relationship and a rival. The rival is usually another person, but occasionally it is something else, such as loss of valuable relationship time to a favored activity. They write, the core form of jealousy primarily involves threats to relationship rewards, including loss of a loved one's attention, affection, or resources to another. We mostly think of jealousy in the context of romantic relationships, but jealousy also applies to parent child interactions, sibling relationships, friendships, and coworker relationships. In children, jealousy most often relates to loss of parental attention or perceived special treatment of a sibling that they believe to be unfair. In adults, there are the familiar scenarios like our partner flirting with someone at a party or a close friend suddenly spending a lot of time with a new friend. But sometimes we might even feel a pang of jealousy when a partner or friend spends a lot of time alone, doing something that doesn't involve us. We might feel anger or sadness or fear, but what goes through our mind is that we are jealous. And the reason for our jealousy and the accompanying emotion is that the other person or activity is threatening to take time away from our relationship. While jealousy is frequently considered more socially acceptable than envy, it can often lead to more dire consequences. For example, some research has found that high levels of jealousy are directly related to problem drinking and to interpersonal violence when drinking. Huh. Other research has found that frequent experiences of jealousy combined with problematic alcohol use are related specifically to higher levels of physical assault and sexual coercion. But is all jealousy dangerous? No. It's normal to feel some level of jealousy, and research shows that in small doses and expressed appropriately, it's a normal part of healthy relationships. I love how the poet, Maya Angelou, frames it. Jealousy in romance is like salt in food. A little can enhance the savor, but too much can spoil the pleasure, and under certain circumstances can be life threatening. That is pretty good. Last, it's interesting to note that people who are more satisfied in their romantic relationships are less likely to be jealous about potential relationship threats. However, they are more likely to they are more likely to react negatively to actual relationship breaches. Hmm. Even after learning about these distinctions, it still feels hard to use the word envious. Maybe it's because envy can have the hostility component. Also, I wonder if, unconsciously, we don't use the term because it's one of the seven deadly sins, and two of the Ten Commandments are warnings against envy. Is it in our upbringing and our culture to feel shame about feeling envy? Additionally, the term jealous has worked its way into our vocabulary in a way that can sound almost complimentary or admiring. Your vacation pics are great. I'm so jealous. And who can get mad when we use jelly for jealous? It's funny and sounds benign in a sticky, sweet way. I love those shoes. I'm so jelly. No one would wonder if you're thinking, I want those. I don't want you to have those, and you're going down. Regardless of whether we choose to change our language or not, understanding the nuances of the language can help us ask ourselves the right questions when we're experiencing jealousy or envy. If we're feeling afraid or sad or angry, or we're deep in coveting mode, we have the tools now to ask ourselves, am I fearful of losing something I value to another person? Or do I want something someone else has? If I want something that someone else has, do I want to see them lose it? Or is it not about that? If I'm scared I'm losing something important to me, what kind of conversation do I need to have with that person? Resentment. Understanding resentment, how it works in my life, where it comes from, and how I stay out of it, has been one of my lifelong struggles. This is not something that's easy for me to share with you because, on top of struggling with resentment, I'm judgmental toward my own resentment. Let me explain. We know from the research that unwanted identity is the most powerful elicitor of shame. Sorry, I'm going to read that again. We know from the research that unwanted identity is the most powerful elicitor of shame. If you want to know what's likely to trigger shame for you, just fill in the sentence stem. It's really important for me not to be perceived as blank. Hmm, highlight this. Doo-doo-doo. All right. Resentful and bitter are definitely on my list. So I struggle with feeling resentment, and I struggle with how struggling with resentment makes me feel. For years, I assumed that resentment was a form of anger related to my perfectionism. I mostly felt resentful toward people whom I perceived to be not working or sacrificing or grinding or perfecting or advocating as hard as I was. Excuse me. You want to see me go into full tilt resentment? Just watch someone tell me, yeah, I stopped working on it. It's not exactly perfect, but it's good enough. Or, I know it's due tomorrow, but I'm wiped out, so I'm packing it in. Or, I don't get involved in those things. They really don't affect me. Ugh, it's on. I spent decades working on my perfectionism, and that helped. But resentment remained an issue. Then, all of a sudden, in one sentence, my life changed. I was inter- I was interviewing the emotions researcher and writer Mark Brackett, for our Unlocking Us podcast, and we were chatting before the actual recording started. Out of the blue, I said, "Before we start, I've got a personal question. Is resentment part of the anger family?" Without hesitation, Mark replied, "No, resentment is part of envy." Oh, holy shit. That's what she says in the book, okay? All right. I'm not mad because you're resting. I'm mad because I'm so bone tired and I want to rest. But unlike you, I'm going to pretend that I don't need to. Hmm. I'm not furious that you're okay with something that's really good and imperfect. I'm furious because I want to be okay with something that's really good and imperfect. Your lack of work is not making me resentful. My lack of rest is making me resentful. My life changed. Maybe it's unfair to say that it changed in one sentence because I've been curious and committed to figuring out my resentment for 26 years. Maybe it's a case of when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And why 26 years? Because I remember the moment I saw resentment in another person and thought, oh no, she's so unlikable, so awful, but so painfully relatable. I don't want to be that person. It was 1995, and I was alone at the movie theater watching Home for the Holidays. It's a funny, smart movie directed by Jodie Foster about adult children gathering at their parents' house on Thanksgiving Day. Two siblings, played by Holly Hunter and Robert Downey Jr., are unconventionally free spirits who have both moved away and mainstayed a close relationship. Then there's the sister played brilliantly by Cynthia Stevenson, who never left, who takes care of the parents more than they'd like, who is paralyzed by perfectionism, and whose rigidity makes her the brunt of family jokes. She's bitter and resentful and exhausted. After dinner goes very wrong and a turkey ends up in the perfect sister's lap, she and her obnoxiously uptight family leave. Then there's a scene when Cynthia Stevenson's character is in the basement of her house, working out on her Stairmaster, and Holly Hunter's character comes over to apologize for Thanksgiving turning into a circus. The resentful sister goes off about how she's the only one who grew up and how the other two shirked all of the responsibilities that she now has to bear alone. After she says something really cruel to Holly Hunter's character, she looks down at the Stairmaster and signals for her sister to leave. Do you mind? This is the only thing I do all day that I like. Yikes. I don't think I've ever been that bad. But as I said, it was painfully, that does suck. Sorry, it just clicked. Yikes. I don't think I've ever been that bad. But as I said, it was painfully relatable and scary to think that I could even be on that trajectory. Now, when I start to feel resentful, instead of thinking, what is that person doing wrong? Or what should they be doing? I think, what do I need but I'm afraid to ask for? While resentment is definitely an emotion, I normally recognize it by a familiar thought pattern. What mean and critical thing am I rehearsing saying to this person? Here's our definition. Resentment is the feeling of frustration, judgment, anger, better than, and or hidden envy related to perceived unfairness or injustice. It's an emotion that we often experience when we fail to set boundaries or ask for what we need, or when expectations let us down because they were based on things we can't control, like what other people think, what they feel, or how they're going to react. Hmm. Okay. Um, I might not be able to finish the chapter today, but we're gonna keep going. Sh- Schadenfreude. Okay, so this is the word. I don't know if you got Schadenfreude. Sh- Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is a compound of the German words Schaden, meaning harm, and Freud, meaning joy. It's pronounced Schadenfreude. Ah, Schadenfreude. Okay, and the word is full of it these, and the world is full of it these days. The German language is known for accurately capturing nuanced emotions, often with compound words that make the meaning very clear. In the case of Schadenfreude, it simply means pleasure or joy derived from someone else's suffering or misfortune. Dang. All of us on the research team were confident that no English equivalent existed, and the articles we read seemed to agree. However, I recently read the piece in the Irish Times in which a reader made the argument that Epicaricacy, epicaricacy captures the same meaning. It means rejoicing at, taking fun in, or getting pleasure from the misfortune of others. The word is derived from the ancient Greek epi, upon, charis, joy, and kakos, evil. Epicaricacy is far less fun to say than schadenfreude. And other than that article, I've never heard it used and can't even find it in most dictionaries. Interesting. Schadenfreude, Schadenfreude, on the other hand, is a word I hear a lot. In an article in the Wall Street Journal, the reporter Ben Cohen explains it is an old German word whose usage in English dates to the 1850s, spiking in American publications after World War II, but then fading, according to Google data. It returned nearly a half century later, some linguists say, because of a 1991 episode of The Simpsons. What? The Simpsons, they keep winning. Okay. More recently, the term made a guest appearance on Ted Lasso, when one of the characters was rejoicing in another character's misfortune until Ted Lasso declared the office a Schadenfreude. God, how do you, Schadenfreude free zone. While Schadenfreude may be fun to say, and it's an increasingly used term in the United States, it's a tough emotion. These are cruelty and insecurity. There is a cruelty and insecurity about it. Taking pleasure in someone else's failings, even if that person is someone we really dislike, can violate our values and lead to sorry, big up. Taking pleasure in someone else's failings, even if that person is someone we really dislike, can violate our values and lead to feelings of guilt and shame. But make no mistake, it's seductive, especially when we're sucked into groupthink. It's easy to build counterfeit connection with collective Schadenfreude. I say counterfeit because when we see someone who we don't like, we disagree with, or is outside our group stumble, fall, or fail, it's tempting to celebrate that suffering together and to stir up collective emotion. That kind of bonding might feel good for a moment, but nothing that celebrates the humiliation or pain of another person builds lasting connection. Schadenfreude involves counter empathy. Okay, Schadenfreude involves counter empathy. Our emotional reaction is incongruent with another person's emotional experience. When someone else is suffering and we feel joy, there is decreased activity in the area of the brain that processes empathy and increased activity in the reward centers. In other words, when we feel Schadenfreude, it shuts down the area of our brain that we use when feeling empathy and lights up the areas of the brain that makes us feel good and that entice us to engage in similar behaviors in the future. Ooh. I think it's important to point out, especially in this political and social climate, that when we feel relieved, grateful, or even happy that someone who has done something hurtful, unethical, or unjust is held accountable, that's not Schadenfreude and normally doesn't stem from counter empathy. On the contrary, it can stem from empathy for the aggrieved. It's similar to the distinction that when we hold someone accountable and they respond to that accountability by feeling shame, it does not mean we've shamed them. When we are relieved or happy to see someone held accountable for wrongdoing, we're not automatically celebrating their suffering, but more often we're grateful for the healing that accountability brings to those who have been affected by the wrongdoing. Schadenfreude has trait-like properties, meaning that some people have a tendency to take greater pleasure in others' misfortune across a range of scenarios. It is positively correlated with envy. All right. I'm just going to finish this section. All right. It is positively correlated with envy, aggression, narcissism, and anger, and negatively correlated with empathy and conscientiousness. We often don't talk about our Schadenfreude. I'm getting this all wrong. Schadenfreude, because it can make us feel shame and or guilt. This came up a lot during the pandemic when vaccinated people struggle with feeling outside their values. Sorry. This came up a lot during the pandemic when vaccinated people struggled with feeling outside their values over their Schadenfreude toward anti-vaccination folks who were diagnosed with COVID. I wrestled with it myself. I remember thinking one day, is this who I want to be? Someone who celebrates people getting sick or dying, regardless of the circumstance? I would justify it for a minute by thinking, but they're threatening my health and the health of people I love. In the end, I couldn't make it work with my values, but I'm still angry. And without a viable accountability strategy, it's hard not to let the shitty emotions take over. Researchers Richard H. Smith and Wilco W. Van Dijk grabbed my attention with this line about Schadenfreude. It's an emotion typically born out of inferiority rather than superiority. I would add that it doesn't always have to be about inferiority. Schadenfreude is also born out of fear, powerlessness, and or a sense of deservedness. Interesting. Okay, that was my time. We didn't finish this chapter today. Um, there's another section left, but this is good. I think these are kind of heavier emotions to deal with. And as she mentioned at the beginning of the chapter, it stems from comparison, which comparison sucks. Comparison is not good. I mean, I think there are times where we try to find healthy comparison. Like if you have uh, even like colleagues or friends you like to work with, so for example, if you're a content creator and you have a fellow content creator, you may have a level of competition. So you might, competitive edge to it. So you might compare it like, oh, this person got more views than me, or their thumbnails are this way. So I'm going to work to try to get better. I like the way that she broke that down to say you can have admiration or reverence towards that. So you can admire another content creator, or you can admire, in this situation, you can admire another man who is more successful to you. Like, for example, somebody that I admire is Jason Wilson. I think he's a great example of a beneficial man. One day I hope to get to be able to interview him, or shoot, just even like go to lunch with him, just hang out with him. But we can have, it can start with a level of comparison, but because because I'm comparing myself to somebody else, I can either choose to envy them, have showed no, well, that Schadenfreude, should whatever that word is, that's something different. But I can let comparison lead to envy and jealousy, or I can let it uh, come from a place of admiration and reverence. And I think that's good. Again, it's important to label these feelings. And I think the biggest takeaway that I have is the admiration part, um, because it challenges you internally to actually want to get better. So it's fine to have admiration towards somebody. I think again, like she mentions in the book, a lot of people mistake envy and jealousy, comparing, saying they're one and the same thing, but they're not. Envy, the way I understand it, envy is usually I want something that somebody else has, and jealousy is like I'm feeling protective or scared of, I guess, losing something that I already have. So envy is I want to take something or I have something that somebody else has. Jealousy is I'm afraid somebody's going to take what I already have. And so I think about that in regards to, for me, it's always been thinking about God and my relationship with God, and how in the scripture it says God is a jealous God. So a lot of people look at God and be like, well, he's jealous, and like that's a negative and a bad thing. So he's jealous and so on and so forth. Well, there's a difference between, again, jealousy and envy. This is my understanding, and not trying to defend God. But in my mind, that means that God actually cares about me. That means he fights for me. He cares about me. He sacrificed for me, and I am in relationship with him. Compared to like envious, it's like, he's trying to steal things from me. No, he's jealous that I am giving my attention, my time, and my energy to other things that aren't good for me, and are taking me away from him, taking me away from the Most High. And I can understand that. I think it's the same thing. Like if you are in a romantic relationship, if you are, and she mentioned it doesn't have to be only romantic relationships, but if you are in a relationship with somebody and you're spending time with them, you're caring about them, you're learning about them, you can feel a way if they start hanging out with other people, in an unhealthy manner. Like, because no, I think there's a level of jealousy that can be toxic, where you then, that can lead to like levels of emotional abuse, where you don't want people to, and after a while, I wonder if that transmutes into something other than jealousy. Like, I don't know, maybe she explains that in the book later, but it's you should, in regards to relationships, understand like, okay, it's okay that other people have relationships over here. So like, hey, good morning, good morning. How you doing, level up single mom? Um, what was I saying? Darn it. But there's a different like other people need to be in relationships. So yes, if you're dating somebody or if you have a romantic partner or whatever, you want them to have friends. You should want them to have friends because those relationships benefit them. But there are people who have like toxic jealousy where it's like, no, I want to keep you all to myself. That's not good. That's another level. And there was a quote. Let me see if I can find it real quick. We actually read a lot today. I'm going the wrong way. There was a quote that I thought was really good. She quoted Maya Angelou about jealousy in food. The quote is okay. The quote is jealousy in romance is like salt in food. A little can enhance the savor, but too much can spoil the pleasure and under certain circumstances can be life threatening. I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful analogy because yeah, like yes, even in romantic relationships, I think a little bit of jealousy, whether it's for a lot of it, it's perceived, and a lot of these feelings and emotions that we have, it comes from our perception. Sometimes, yes, it can be reinforced by reality or whatever, but um, a little level of jealousy can kind of keep you on your toes to want to like be your best self, you know. And I think you can use that energy, you can use those emotions, you can use that feeling to continue to work on yourself. Like, well, I don't know. For example, for me, like, well, I we went out to I'm making this up. We went out to like eat or something like that, and there was a guy that was like really in shape or something, and I don't know, maybe at glance it's like, oh, looks like she's looking at him too long. It's like, I need to get in the gym. Like, it's like I want to make sure that I am my best self for my person. Like that can be again perceived jealousy. She may not have been looking at the person at all, just looking at the menu. It's like, oh, I want to get some juice over there or something. Like, I don't know, but like in that perceived situation, it's like, okay, that that twinge of jealousy can inspire in me to want to be better. I want to continue to get better because I want to make sure that I'm showing up well for my person. So, but yes, we covered admiration, reverence, jealousy, envy, and resentment. Resentment too. I thought resentment was a good one. Um, yeah, I think resentment is kind of sorry, there's a plane going by. Resentment is kind of sneaky, and I'm sure that can be a really hard one to like navigate through. Um, I'm gonna have to mull over on that one a little bit more. Resentment was kind of deep, and then the Schadenfreude. I'm still saying that wrong. Hold on, I'm gonna read the definition of resentment one more time. Resentment is the feeling of frustration, judgment, anger, better than, and or hidden envy related to perceived unfairness or injustice. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of deep. All right. Then yeah, and the last one was Schadenfreude. So tomorrow we'll finish out this section, probably get started on the next session, the next section. But thank you all for joining me joining me for another reading with Jam session. We are reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, and I think this is helpful. This is helpful. Again, I think my main takeaway is the admiration part. Like maybe it would be necessary. I'm saying this to myself, sorry. Maybe it would be necessary to find or use more energy admiring others because part of admiration is that it inspires you to be it inspires you to make changes in yourself. So instead of because I think a lot of these emotions have similar energy or they're in the same category. So instead of having envy or having jealousy, turning that into admiration. so that I can use it for growth? I don't know. I don't know. Well, again, thank you all. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Take it easy. Peace.